So as the Nintendo Switch Online service continues to mature, it is becoming extremely apparent that Nintendo has not thought this service out very well at all, as recent updates have not gone over the best with fans, as they are clearly scraping the bottom of the barrel with new game additions to things like the NES and SNES online library. And in today's video, I want to talk about the changes and updates that we need to see from Nintendo when it comes to the Switch Online service, and even rumors suggesting that we may be seeing N64 added in at some point in the future. What's up, Nation? If it's your first time on the channel, make sure you join Sunbro Nation by subscribing below. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoy it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. Now, as I mentioned, guys, we are talking about Nintendo Switch Online today, and really the lack of updates that Nintendo has put forth recently when it comes to things like the games that they are adding into the service, and really just the value of the service overall as a whole. Because, you know, you do have to keep in mind when you compare things like Nintendo Switch Online compared to the other guys like Sony and Microsoft, that obviously Sony and Microsoft have lived online a lot longer than Nintendo has, and that has always really been an afterthought for them in their consoles. But in a day and age where online multiplayer is a very important component of a console, and when you need to have perks to entice people to actually sign up and pay for an active subscription, Nintendo does seem to be really dropping the ball with this online service. Now, do they need to add in more pricing tiers to give us more value? Maybe, but what do they do from here and where do they go from here? And that's kind of what I want to talk about today, because if you just look back into recent updates, you can actually see the most recent games that they added in on the SNES library of games was received very poorly. And it's obvious it's because these are games that are just kind of shovelware or forgotten about, games that would have just died on the SNES that are getting second life on Nintendo Switch Online. And it does appear that they're just kind of adding in whatever is out there, regardless of how popular the games are or how much fans want them. And that's becoming very apparent. And if you look at the like to dislike ratio on Nintendo's last update for the SNES games that they added in with Jelly Boy and the other couple, I don't even remember the other names, but you know, I haven't checked these games out. I don't intend to really check them out, and I just know that fans are obviously getting bored and, you know, really let down at the kind of updates that Nintendo's been providing with Nintendo Switch Online service. Now, as I mentioned, it is a cheaper service than what Microsoft and Sony offer, but we also don't have very basic functionality just like party chat. I mean, you have a phone app, which is just the most ridiculous thing that they could have put out. So it's like, okay, download your Nintendo smartphone app and then call your friend through the Nintendo Switch smartphone app. It's like, why don't you just call them on the phone or even get on Discord or some more robust service? Like, it doesn't make sense that they don't have basic things like party invites and in-house chat rooms, whether that comes down to text or even just in voice chat on the console itself. You can't tell me that Nintendo Switch is not capable of it, because I'm certain that it is with that Tegra processor. So there's some, you know, really basic updates that I think that they can put out to this service that will really, you know, please fans and give longer life to it. And we even saw some major overhaul updates to things like a portion of kind of like the Nintendo eShop, but a different layout style that they added in when it comes to the NES and SNES layout and how you can navigate the games and look at them. And they're all free whenever you go into the app if you're already a Nintendo Switch Online subscriber. But what was interesting about this update is it almost made it look like more of a store layout, and a lot of people started speculating that maybe this is going to be the return of Virtual Console or some, you know, paid games that are premium titles that don't come included with the Nintendo Switch Online service, as that's just kind of what that menu looks like. Or it also looks like they're just making room potentially for more consoles to live in the same page. So maybe something like Gameboy Advance or N64, and those have been heavily rumored consoles to come to this Nintendo Switch Online service, mainly just because it makes so much sense to do it. Like, the fact that they haven't done it is just very strange. They're sitting on a wide library of games that fans want to play through, and they really could even charge it probably a higher subscription tier to get access to things like Game Boy Advance and N64 specifically. I mean, if you think about just the quality library that is out there of Nintendo 64 games that are just not being touched and probably won't be touched, I mean, we could hopefully see things like the Ocarina of Time HD remaster, which I'll be making a future video on because there is a lot of rumors heating up when it comes to that title. But, you know, we could probably see them do the big hitters and do a remake or remaster from the ground up. But the majority of the N64 library sadly will die on the N64 where it stands. And I just think that it's something that Nintendo needs to at least do something to acknowledge the history of that incredible console, as that was the intro to 3D gaming back in the day. And that was really the first console that I truly fell in love with, as I started gaming on the SNES. But then the N64 is what took me to that hardcore gamer status. specifically Ocarina of Time making me a lifelong Zelda fan. So I would love to see a future generation of gaming and all of the people who have the Nintendo Switch now with the 85 million plus install base that they have also be able to go back and experience some of those timeless classics. I mean, you have games on the N64 that, you know, we're going to need to see brought over at some point, and Mario 64 is actually a perfect example, because if you guys don't remember, the Mario 3D All-Stars collection was only a 6-month run, and while you can still find it in stores right now, technically Nintendo has discontinued that title and they are not making any more of them. So once they sell through this initial stock, there will not be a way to go back and play Mario 64 unless if we get it on something like an N64 online port to that library. So I do think it makes a lot of sense for Nintendo to acknowledge this. And I do want to quickly read through one of a recent investor meeting. It was back in the beginning of July, or maybe the end of June is actually when it took place. And there was some translations that took place because there was investors asking Nintendo what they were planning with the future of Nintendo Switch Online, and they had this to say in response. So the question reads here, are there any plans under consideration to make improvements to Nintendo Switch Online service at a price point higher than it is currently? Furukawa replied, our company started the Nintendo Switch Online service for Nintendo Switch owners in September 2018. By subscribing, you can play games like Animal Crossing, New Horizons with friends on the internet. You can also play a selection of NES and Super NES games. The service has passed 26 million paid accounts as of September last year and continues to increase at a good rate alongside sales of the Nintendo Switch. We believe that it is important to add new customers, but to keep existing ones as well. That is why we were working to make the Nintendo Switch more fun and convenient to use by elevating the appeal of the service. Now, there was also another question that I wasn't able to find the translation for, but it basically centered around if Nintendo would ever bring back something like the mini console line. And basically Furukawa acknowledged that, you know, he liked that person knew about the mini consoles with the SNES and NES Mini, but he didn't say anything specific on if they would plan something like that for something like N64, because if you remember when those original NES Mini and SNES Minis came out, it was at the beginning of the Switch, or really the end of the Wii U's life cycle, and Nintendo was kind of experimenting with their old library of games, trying to kind of get some extra revenue, selling those at like 50 to 70 bucks. I think it was actually 50 retail for an NES Mini at the time when it launched. And, you know, they made some good money and a bunch of collectors went and bought those things up. And now you cannot find them really anymore unless if it's on the resale market. But they obviously pivoted as they added in those game libraries as part of the Nintendo Switch Online benefits. So you really don't need to go out and buy a mini console with the classic controllers to play through those titles. You now just have them as part of your Nintendo Switch Online subscription. So do they do an N64 Mini? I think it's less likely that we see that, and more likely that we do just see them add in this as a console that is supported with the Nintendo Switch Online update. And I think that a perfect time to announce a big feature like this that fans are clearly wanting, as you know, again, we're running out of the quality titles that live in the NES and SNES world. I think that you do something like this at a September Nintendo Direct. And of course, it's not officially confirmed from Nintendo, but if you look at history, other than, you know, even in 2020, we got a Direct in September. It was just a Mario themed Direct, as obviously COVID totally wrecked the year of 2020 when it comes to game development. But we still had something from Nintendo in September. And I think that, you know, if you go back before that, 2019, 2018, and 2017 all had Nintendo Directs in September. So it makes sense to do something like this and to really, you know, spark up the fan base again, to get pumped up about the online service. Because when I tell you guys, my subscription actually expired like 3 months ago. It just ran out on the payment and I didn't update it. I didn't buy another full year for the $20, which is obviously very cheap, but it's like, that's how little this service is adding to my day in, day out Switch experience at this point, that I've been expired on that service for 3 months and haven't even really thought about it. So Nintendo really needs to get on the ball with adding some new value and keeping their core customers really happy with this service. And I think the perfect way to do that is to initially add in more consoles and then just really give us some basic online functionality that you can expect on that all the other competitors have, such as party chat and such as chat rooms, and then just do some overhaul to the Switch firmware itself, like folders and themes that you can even charge money for if you wanted to. I mean, you could literally charge money for Breath of the Wild dynamic backgrounds on the Switch, and there would be so many people that would pay like $1.99 or $2.99 for paid premium themes like that. So you can't tell me that there's not more revenue opportunities out there for Nintendo, but The funny thing about being a Nintendo fan is that they're always going to do what they want to do at the end of the day, and when they want to announce something is when we will see it. So I do really want to hear from you guys on this, because it is an interesting talking point for me. Like, I'm a hardcore N64 fan, and I would love to see those games come to the Nintendo Switch Online service. That would probably be my first choice of the next console that I would like to see. But there's also a lot of discussion from fans that really just enjoyed and appreciated the Virtual Console service, which is kind of funny because when Virtual Console went around on its first initial debut back on the Wii, it was received pretty poorly. Like, fans didn't like to pay $5.99 or $4.99 for a lot of these classic titles, and some of them were even $9.99. But nowadays people are saying, listen, Nintendo, just at least give us the Virtual Console and we'll pay those prices to be able to play those games on the Switch. So the tone has definitely changed, but I'd be curious to see if fans really would be happy with paying games individually, or if you think Nintendo should just add in a higher pricing tier to Nintendo Switch Online service. Because honestly, you know, you look at Microsoft with their Games Pass service charging $15 a month but giving you all these quality AAA titles. It makes sense whenever there's enough value there, and I think I would do something like that with Nintendo Switch Online. Like, make it $5.99 a month, but maybe give me N64 Game Boy, like the full Game Boy library all the way back to the original Game Boy through the Gameboy Advance. I don't know how they would do DS games. That's probably out of the conversation. They could make it work, but it's probably more work than what Nintendo's willing to do. Then maybe even include GameCube in there, and I will happily keep a $5.99 a month subscription to Nintendo Switch Online. But again, guys, at this point in the video, I want to know all your thoughts and opinions on everything we talked about today. What do you hope we see most from Nintendo Switch Online going forward? Do you think there's a likelihood that Nintendo could add in N64 at the end of something like a Nintendo Direct in September? Or do you think this is something that, you know, Nintendo's just going to coast with the same $1.99 a month and the same features that we're getting for the foreseeable future, and you don't really anticipate any major changes to happen? And then also bonus, just share some of your favorite N64 games with me down in the comments below if you did have a chance to play through some of that great library that existed on that console. So please do those couple things before you leave the video today. Thanks so much for watching the video today, everyone. I do truly appreciate you all sticking around until the end. I do at this point in the video want to invite you all one more time to join Sunbro Nation if you haven't done so already. Do so by subscribing below, hit the like button on your way out if you enjoyed it today, and make sure you turn on your bell notification icon so you're kept up to date with all the newest gaming news. That's going to do it for me, guys. I hope you all have a great day. Sunbro Nation, out.